Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm Liz Downing with Teikametrics. I'm going to take some time to introduce you to everybody, but I want to introduce my co-host, TJ Highland from Elevate Brands.
How you doing? Good to have you. Good to be
Good.
here, Liz.
I'm super. There was a thunderstorm. I was afraid that all of you were going to miss out but luckily we have fail safes in place. So I've asked a bunch of my friends to come on today. TJ and I were talking about Elevate Brands. If you don't know anything about Elevate Brands, they buy Amazon businesses. TJ, do you want to say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So Elevate was founded a couple years ago and came about more so in the last couple of years to buy up the private label Amazon businesses, right? So there's a lot of companies in the space and a lot has changed, especially 2020, 2021, and then, in the first 7 months of this year. So what we wanted to do here was kind of touch base, kind of get a pulse check on where things are from our perspective and kind of let you as sellers know, and then invited 6 and 7 of our closest friends here to let you know other things that you can do if you're not ready to sell your business. Right now might be a really prime time to do so. If your business is in a great position, it also might be a really good time to do so, but you have to make that determination for yourself. And some of the other people here on the panel will go through both sides, right? So it's not just a don't sell your business, wait for the recovery kind of conversation. So we'll go through all that and have a good time over the next hour and a half or so.
Yeah, so a couple housekeeping items. We are recording this session. That's usually the first 17 questions or so I get. We are recording. We will send you the replay if you registered for this webinar. Please feel free to submit questions throughout. I'm pretty good at weaving those in. This ain't my first rodeo. So a little bit about Teikametrics. Teikametrics helps you optimize your presence on e-commerce platforms with your advertising. So we've got great tech, great AI, great data, and we help you pull the levers for success so that you can beat the competition on Amazon and Walmart right now and soon other marketplaces. And enough about that. I'd like to introduce Jason Boyce of Avenue 7 Media. Jason, say a couple words about yourself.
Hi, Liz. I'm Jason Boyce, co-founder and CEO of Avenue 7 Media. We are a fully outsourced Amazon department for fast-growing brands with a growth mentality. And that's what gets me up every morning is helping sellers change sellers' lives. That's our mission over here at Av7. Just like my life was changed as a big Amazon seller, we try to do that for our clients. And happy to be here, Liz. Always a pleasure to speak to you and TJ, and thanks for having me.
I asked Jason, do you want to be on a webinar? And he's like, I'll always do a webinar with you, Liz. And I was like, that was the highlight of my day. So let's go in alphabetical order. Michelle from GS1.
Yes, hi, I'm Michelle Covey with GS1 US. I lead our commercialization efforts, basically bringing new products and offerings to the market, but I also am an evangelist of GS1 standards, and I do a lot of education around the importance of barcoding your products correctly with GS1 standard barcodes.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. Rich, you're up.
Rich Goldstein. I run an IP law firm, Goldstein Patent Law, and I work with sellers to help them to protect their products and brands with patents and trademarks, and also to create valuable IP assets that help to increase the value of your company at close, or at exit rather, and also to even make an exit possible. Sometimes without the right IP, it might be a deal killer. So I guess we'll talk about that a bit later.
Absolutely. Yoni.
Hey everybody, Yoni Mazur. I'm one of the co-founders and currently the Chief Growth Officer of Gatira. Our mission is pretty simple. We're a technology company and our focus is on getting you the maximum FBA reimbursements that you're eligible to receive. So typically what happens is we're able to go back 18 months on all the FBA transactions in your account, and through the data found an opportunity to get you a financial recovery and then secure that for you and flush you back with cash you probably never expected to have. So hopefully you can use that cash to grow your business, invest more in advertising, do another product launch or improve your EBITDA if you want to optimize your exit or your sell and things of that nature.
Awesome. Good to see you. Chris McCabe.
Yeah, hi, I'm Chris from ecommerce Chris, so creator and founder of that, and left Amazon several years ago to help sellers understand why Amazon works the way it does or doesn't work the way it does, to help them appeal reinstatements primarily, but also other services, brand protection services, and otherwise. So looking forward to talking. I have these conversations a lot with brands, so I'm looking forward to talking about this today.
I did my very first webinar ever with Chris
That's right.
in 16.
And I did my second ever webinar with you.
And last but not least, Allie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ali Ramirez. I work with Sellers Funding. I'm the director of sales and also work with our partnerships team. And Sellers Funding basically is a full suite of services for sellers, not only on Amazon, but on pretty much any platform. And one of the most important things to note is, in addition to funding, we have about 6 or 7 products that can be a one-stop shop for all of our sellers in terms of financial services.
So you might be asking yourself, what do all these people have in common? So Jason said it the best, I think, and that is that we are all here. We all put out content for free. We all go to conferences. We all have webinars because we want to educate the seller and brand owner community. We want to provide the best possible resources. Teikametrics' motto is to help every single seller and brand owner. I know everybody else on this panel has the same mission in mind. So when TJ and I were talking about is now the right time to exit, I started thinking about all the things a brand should and should not be doing, whether or not they're thinking of an exit, but just to make sure that their brand and their seller account was as healthy as possible, that they're optimized, that they're in a position to make any decision they want to make about their business at any time. So now is a good time to do that. And I was also, TJ and I were talking about the absolutely dramatic change e-commerce has seen as a result of COVID-19 and all of the different things that have happened because of the global pandemic. So I was thinking about Jason. Jason always has the most thoughtful answers to questions. And I thought, I bet you Jason's done a lot thinking about this. So Jason, give me a really big overview and then kind of drill down and just.
Sure. Let's take it up to 40,000 feet and then we'll land the plane. It's interesting. We all here talk to the press at varying times. Here's what the press wants. There's a lot of scary stuff out there right now in the press, right? Here's what the press wants to do most of the time. And there's all obviously exceptions. They want that tragic Greek tragedy to report. And anything that you read in terms of negative on the macro environment, there's a lot of negative reports out there, a lot of negative news in the headlines, and real some challenging economics data, but I always take it with a grain of salt. Remember, the reporters are trying to embellish this. They need to get clicks, they need to get reads, right? So let's first of all keep it in perspective. Second of all, even though the environment is challenging, we may very well be in a recession right now. If not, we may be headed towards one. I've been through one or two of these, in my time, starting all the way back in 2002 as an e-commerce retailer. And there's some positives to take from this. And the way the market has sort of shifted, we're here to talk about is now a good time to exit. I'm selling my house here in LA and moving to Portland, Oregon, because I like water and I like green trees, and so we're moving up there. And so, when we bought our house, we were one of 5 offers that we made within 24 hours of the house going on a list, getting listed.
What year was that? What year was that?
That was 2 years ago.
Oh, okay, fresh.
And so white hot market, it's definitely a seller's market. Within 24 hours of listing your home, you're probably going to get 5 offers. 4 of them are going to be over ask, right? Well, we just listed our house again, and we got 1 offer at ask. And so I think that the housing market, at least here in LA, is tracking a little bit with the market for Amazon sellers. Now, I'm still going to sell my house. I'm in escrow, and I'm really happy with the price, right? But would I have liked to have gotten 4 offers instead of 1 that were over ask? Sure. That to me is the big shift. If you look at the housing market as an analogy, that to me is the big shift that's happening. That being said, if you have a good business, if you're growth minded and you're growing, you have strong EBITDA and you add value, you have differentiated products that are cool, sexy, and fun and add value to consumers, why not look at an opportunity to sell if that's where your mind's at, right? I don't necessarily think it's a bad time to sell, Liz. I just think that the market has shifted a little bit away from it being a massive seller's market to being less of a seller's market. But if you're a good, strong business and you're growing and you're doing all the right things to solve and take care of Amazon shoppers in a way that creates long-term value for your business, it's always a good time.
Did we lose him?
I think we lost him.
Okay, got it. All right,
all right,
ladies,
well,
take it back. Go ahead, TJ. Yeah.
TJ, say something.
yeah, I think we might have lost Liz as well. Maybe it's the same storm there on both
No,
coasts. But
Liz is good. We just can't hear her.
If it works.
Jason, I think we just lost your audio. We can still see you.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Well,
now
let
you're
me ask
back.
you
can
this,
hear
Jason,
you.
if I can interfere here. So in LA, right? Your house is in LA. I don't know if you can hear me, but are there any further neighborhoods in LA that are getting ask price or beyond? Any hotspots in the market? I think that's part of the analogy is that there's still hotspots for certain areas with tremendous demand, and probably for those areas and hotspots, why not sell, right? So in the same analogy is if you're in a hotspot within the e-commerce marketplace, and we have a very, very strong demand, especially with this difficult market, and if you're ready to take it easy or have a liquidity event to replicate your success or present your success, you do it, no, Jason?
Yeah, it's a great question, Yoni. And the answer is always with everything is it depends. The other challenge that's happening from the housing market, and the same is true in the aggregator space, and TJ can speak to this better than I can, is the cost of capital has gone up, right? Interest rates on a mortgage have gone up by double what I locked in when I bought my house 2 years ago. And so the same thing is happening with buyers. So when they're looking at a business, they're much more interested now with a special emphasis on cash flow. You need to be able to have higher cash flow in order to get a deal done because your cost of buying that business is greater, right? And so to your question specifically, Yoni, if you're selling a $3 or $4 million house, I'm seeing all of those prices come way down by like hundreds of thousands of dollars. If you're in the $900 to $1.5 million, they're coming in at ask. Stuff that's still on the lower end, that's 400,000 to 700,000. Some of those houses are selling over ask. And so, there's a little bit, it's not a direct analogy, but depending on what your annual revenue is, what your growth rate is, if all of the metrics point to, man, this is a healthy business that's not only going to survive the recession, but it's going to come out the other end 10 times stronger, then why wouldn't a buyer look at that business to make the purchase, especially if that seller's got the 1,000-yard stare because they've been breaking their ass for 5-10 years and they're done, right? And they're ready to move on and take a few months off at the beach, right? So that, I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, game over. Yeah, that's a good job.
Yeah, I have a comment on that too. It's like, so if you follow that analogy where you, on the one hand, maybe last year there were 4 offers coming in, and this year now there's 1 offer. So it's kind of like if you are buying a house and you're one of the 4 offers and you're lucky enough to have your offer accepted, but then you notice, hey, there's a drainage problem with the house. But you say, no, I don't want to lose the deal. I don't want to lose the deal. And so you're willing to go ahead with it, even though there are some fleas. But now, if you're the 1 offer that's been accepted, and you know that you were the only offer, and then things come up. When you're in your due diligence, you start to notice things. You start to notice that there were problems with the house. You might kill the deal, or you might renegotiate. You might ask for an allowance of some kind to deal with that issue. And it's the same thing that's going on with exits now too. Is like where perhaps last year there were 4 different companies vying for your attention, and then one that you get into an LOI, that you get into a more serious consideration with. Perhaps then they were more willing to overlook some fleas than they are now, and that's maybe one of the big shifts.
Yeah, Rich, I think that's almost exactly the case, right? So just in the shift from 2021 to 2022, and more so maybe the last 3 or 4 months, the number of businesses buying other assets has drastically increased for a variety of reasons that we've spoken about, right? So it's the capital markets, it's the access to capital to spend those markets. It has to do also with debt covenants, right? And a lot of these businesses were purchased on debt, and you can only put a certain amount of the purchase price and fund it in debt. And typically that's 3 to 4 times, which is why we've also seen the multiples drop as well. You know, in the heyday of, say, you know, August or September 2021, some businesses were trading for 6, 7, 8 times. Now we're seeing average multiples, you know, I think between 2 and 4 times the EBITDA or SDE, which is seller's discretionary earnings. So I think it all just comes down to, if you are in a position like where you do have a strong business and you are growing and you tick all the boxes, you might be able to get a better multiple on your exit. But you have to find the right buyer. And I think finding the right buyer was always the case, right? Last year, you know, we talked about finding the right buyer for you as a seller, but ultimately I found a lot of sellers just tended to go with whomever was paying the most. Then there's like when selling your e-commerce business, there's the back end of it, because everyone had those sort of earn-out features in there. And now those earn-out features, which you thought were part of your guaranteed payout, are not necessarily happening. So it's always about finding the right buyer at the right time. You know, I think from our perspective as well, it's just, you know, we're still buying businesses, but we're going to be more particular. And in the case of Rich, it's like what he said, we're going to look in, and if we don't see everything that we like, if it doesn't tick every box, yes, if we don't have full conviction on it, it may not be the right time, because we still have to operate that business and grow that business. And I think when you look at the hundreds of businesses that sold in 2021, you know, a large portion of them we would turn them down, and then they'd go get purchased by somebody else. And you know, every aggregator is different. Every aggregator had different sort of criteria. But where is everyone today? And I think that's something to look at too.
So let's talk about those boxes to be checked and those potential fleas. I feel like there are probably a lot of things. I talk a lot about full operational control and understanding of your business, because I feel like people go down rabbit holes and they get laser focused on one thing and they sort of miss the boat on full health and optimization of their business. So Michelle, I was talking to your team a couple months ago, and I was talking about this webinar in particular, and I asked, how many times have you been approached because a brand that started quite a while ago on Amazon was trying to exit and they were actually not compliant with GS1? And it surprised me. But I remember that time. I was around in that time when there were emerging brands that were buying lists of UPCs off of Facebook groups and stuff like that. Can you address what kind of webs you've been trying to unravel?
Sure. So, and you're absolutely right. It is a web, and sometimes a very ugly, sticky web. So as you mentioned, many years ago, Amazon did allow sellers to list their products on their platform with product identifiers, UPCs, also we call them GTINs, that could have been purchased very affordably off of eBay, other non-GS1 sourced sellers. And many sellers found that was very economical for their business, didn't understand the value. They just assigned a number to their product and listed it, and Amazon allowed it go through. Many sellers who are listing now know that Amazon has tightened down some of their requirements and have asked for GS1 sourced GTINs or UPCs assigned to their product. And there's a reason for that. It's really to set the foundation that brand and that brand owner is associated to their product. So it can link for product authenticity, help to combat any kind of counterfeiting of products, but it also does link that brand to their product. And when anybody does come to GS1, their GTINs, their UPCs are associated to their company. And so it helps them, again, with that authenticity. What we find when brands don't do that and they go through either a merger and acquisition, which is, technically what happens when they maybe get sold by another company, when you go to try to sell that asset, it's not linked to their company. And so a lot of sellers will not want to buy that brand's business or that product line is at risk because it's not truly associated to their company. So we've run into a couple of those scenarios as brands have been sold. They can't prove that they're the owner of their G10s, and it can sometimes stop a sell. So again, it's really important to start with the right foundation. A lot of sellers are also coming to us to say, we understand the importance of this, so we want to switch over to a GS1 issued G10 product identifier, because again, it just protects your business, associates your brand to your product, and it helps a lot when when other companies are looking to buy your company or buy your product lines. It just helps with that brand authentication.
I'm surprised how many brands have outsourced the registration of their brand registry to a party that they might not even have contact with now or any relationship with now. Just some agency that they use to set everything up, and they set up their brand registry, and then they don't have any control over it. I've heard from a surprising number of people who have done that.
And sometimes they will, that other agency won't know that they also need to assign those product identifiers like from GS1. So it starts with just knowing the right way to start. We always say it's a good foundation that you continue to build on. So.
And Liz, the interesting thing to me about what Michelle's saying and what Chris is saying is we just talked about how the cost of capital is going up. So the aggregators and the investors, their costs to buy a company are more. If they're looking at an asset and then TJ looks at this and goes, my God, we're going to have to spend the next 3 months cleaning up a hornet's nest of listings with our labor that we have to pay for, their costs go up. So they're much more likely to say yes to a brand that has all of that stuff tightened up and clean.
Yep, it's also in a way intellectual property, kind of an instrument here, so nobody can really ride your coattail on your UPCs and or anything like that. So it makes it much more firm, and like you said, the foundations are much more solid. So it's supposed to be fundamental. It's like getting your social security number, and you can't really function in this country without it, unless you go underground, which is not the way to go.
Did you speak from experience, Yoni?
I came here with $700 in my pocket, but I did have a citizenship, so I did okay with my foundation. Yeah.
Rich, do people come to you with complicated ownership problems?
Oh yeah, and a lot of times it can't be unraveled. I mean, and that's the thing is, a lot of times, the ownership problem is enough to have someone walk away from a deal. If there are issues with the ownership, especially when there are partners or former partners that it's questionable whether the current seller can really convey the entire business or can convey the assets, or maybe the assets are like say a trademark is in the individual name of the seller and also maybe their former partner, and if that can't be unraveled, that can be a deal killer.
Wow.
TJ's nodding. Why are you nodding, TJ?
You saw this happen?
No, I know of, we've worked with Rich before, and there's things that we think and see at a high level, and it's like, oh, this looks good, this looks fine, and then Rich is like, no, it's not, and it's just like, I mean, but like in reality, that's something that probably saved our business a lot of headaches and time, like Jason's talking about, or B, a lot of money, right? Because what happens post fact when somebody else claims this or somebody else, has a right to it, and then we're trying to sell it on Amazon, then it's disputed, and then the listing's down, and there's something you think is this big can quickly unravel to a very large issue.
Chris?
Yeah, and one of the things
Can I put my hand up non-digitally? Oh, no. Go ahead, Rich.
Yeah, and one of the things that happens with that is that when you have an issue like that. So, I mean, to an extent, the way I like to look at it is that when someone's paying a multiple for your business, they're paying on the assumption that the party is going to continue on for a certain number of years, reflected by that multiple. So it's like when you have an issue that's just maybe things are going well now, but it's going to pop up next year, then that really undermines why the business is being purchased for such a multiple. It could reduce the multiple or make it so that it's untenable. But a lot of times those hidden issues are, no one can dispute that the account, that the seller is making money now, but it's like they're landmines that could easily kind of come to light and blow everything up in the future.
Yeah, Chris, were you going to say something?
Just about some of the pre-sale due diligence that we did and conversations we were, even if it wasn't an aggregator or a brand that we worked with. Reviews abuse is an excellent example of, well, there is a warning, but it was a year earlier. How do we evaluate the risk? There are some brands who were using borderline or gray area methods, and they got a warning and it's a long time ago and they stopped it right away, or they didn't even get any positive reviews boost out of that practice, and it does go away. But we saw that a lot of people were assuming that if it was old, it didn't matter, or wishful thinking, like, well, a warning isn't a suspension, so it's not as much of a threat. And unfortunately, with that particular offense, just there are other examples, but with reviews abuse, then and now, you only get one warning a lot of the time. Or if you're a severe abuser, then you might not even get the warning, but the suspension of the account is still valid. And I would speak to brands or sometimes aggregators who would say, well, but that can be fixable. We can hire you. You can get them reinstated. Not necessarily, right? Not if there's loads of evidence of bad faith behavior. And some of that is hard for another party to see during, who did you work with? For how long? How many reviews? I mean, I saw people that were doing assessments and data analysis of reviews, and they would target certain clusters and say, these don't look like they're natural. How did you get them? But some of that's unseen and kind of behind the screen, and you can't assume that it's easily fixable. So that was one of the more interesting pieces to pre-sale due diligence that I saw. And occasionally I had to tell people, you're not really ready to sell this business yet, because it sounds like you still got some things out there. I mean, for all we knew, they might have had some non-compliant product inserts sitting in their packaging in FBA. And on at least one occasion, probably between 2 and 5 occasions, we knew that the person or the company buying that business didn't know that there were units in FBA that still had those inserts in there.
Yeah,
So,
that's the landmine that Rich was talking about, into the future, whoever has to operate the business going forward, that can easily blow up in their face.
Right. It's like you could be running some app in the background on your phone or something that you're running on your laptop that you haven't looked at in a while that could be, sucking up a lot of battery juice. It's kind of the same thing. There could be something going on in the background. You can't see it. You can't touch it, feel it, understand it, unless it's completely divulged. But I guess the question back to TJ would be, I would guess and I would assume that they would be, if they didn't disclose everything like that up front, that they would be in breach and you could undo the deal after the fact. Maybe that's messy, maybe that's difficult to do, but I always kind of wondered that without really knowing how that plays out.
Yeah, there are all those terms, and I think in any contract, and Rich, you probably know more than I, but like there's terms where it's like you act in good faith, right? And something like that, and not divulging all of the information you have on the brand that could affect the brand in 1 month, 1 year, whatever it is not acting in good faith. And obviously there's some sort of timeline on that, but there is always
lie is
that,
the truth. They say the best lie is the truth. You never get it wrong later on. Jason, go ahead.
I just want to emphasize something. If I put my seller hat on for a second, a lot of the stuff that I'm hearing sounds totally overwhelming. Like, how in the world am I ever going to accomplish and clean this stuff up? But I will tell you this, there is a tremendous return on investment. If you reach out to Michelle, if you reach out to Chris, if you reach out to Rich and say, please help me unscrew what I've done to myself over the last 5, 10 years, and whatever money that you put into cleaning this house up will come back to you in spades at an exit. So I just wanted to add that there. The ROI here on this panel is tremendous.
And even I would even say not even on if you're considering an exit, yes, but even if you're not, to continue your business, because we also say, you might have started off on Amazon maybe with, years ago and didn't have the right identifiers, but now your business has grown and you're expanding into other retail channels. they're then going to require those, you know, G10s or UPCs that are coming from GS1, and they have to start all over again. So
Great point.
it's always good to, you know, depending on where you are, do you sell or do you not, it's still good to have that foundation set up.
We have a really good question related to that exactly. Actually, we've got someone who says that they're in a situation where their older SKUs are all eBay UPCs. So they started using GS1 a few years ago, but some of these older products have thousands of reviews, but they're still on the old non-GS1 UPCs. How would you recommend he switches these codes over to GS1? He's scared he'll have to relaunch, losing all the reviews and the sales velocity. Michelle, is that the case? Does he have to start from zero, or do you have something in place?
Oh, well, GS1 does not have, if he's talking about Amazon, you know, coming to GS1, there's a lot of considerations. So I understand it is, that's why I said it's a sticky web to untie. You know, you can come to GS1, get a new identifier. You have to consider packaging and labeling. Do you have to repackage all of your product? There's a cost associated to that. If you have inventory and FBA, it's really hard to pull that or have it relabeled. So you have to understand where your inventory is and if there's any in FBA. So those are some considerations. And then the process of changing them over on the Amazon platform so you don't lose all those reviews is cumbersome. So working with selling partner support, sometimes they have good processes in place, just depending on how it's presented. We've heard people have good luck with it, and sometimes they have a hard time. So I know there's a lot of partners out there that help this community do that type of things. We could give advice on some of the considerations, but it's really tricky getting it changed sometimes if there's inventory, if, you know, that sort of thing. So you have a lot of things to consider if you do change over to a GS1 issued G10.
But it is possible.
It is possible, yes. Like I said, there's a lot of considerations. And again, if you want to start selling those products in other channels, it's always great to have that GS1 identifier, and, you know, it's a foundation for growth in other retail channels as well.
Absolutely, but it is expensive.
It could be, as far as if repackaging, you know, those are the considerations that you have to consider, you know, think about. Like, do you start over, relabel? We've heard of some brands that have to relabel everything, change their packaging. So some can just sticker over. It depends.
It's like renovating your kitchen. It tends to be dirty and nasty work, but once it's ready to go. You can cook better meals and have a better life. So
Absolutely.
it's worth the hustle, yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
I do have a question, if I may. It revolves a little bit about financing. It's more for Alex or maybe even TJ to kind of help me out with this. So I don't know if you guys noticed that, but in the past few months, the dollar has increased by about, I think, around 13% compared to other currencies. So if you're selling Amazon Germany or Amazon UK, you know, the British pounds you're getting or the euros you're getting, they're worth less than the dollar now. So the dollar is stronger. So my question is, if you made all this revenue, do you see sellers holding off on converting it to dollars because the dollar is more expensive? Right? Because that, technically speaking, if you are buying this business and you're US based and you're converting your euros into dollars, it means you did 13% less in revenue or EBITDA or all that stuff. So this is kind of a unusual financial situation where the financial markets and the global currencies are putting such a gap of in a very short time. So if I'm an Amazon seller, selling in the UK, sitting on Great British pounds or euros, should I be waiting for the next few weeks or months so that it becomes high again, and then I convert again into dollars at a cheaper price? Or and that's kind of the question. So what do you guys see? What do you guys think? I don't know if this is something you thought about.
I think we've seen a little bit of both, really depending also where you're manufacturing your products and where you're sitting. So you might actually have a use for that depending on where your business is based. We have seen most of our sellers in Canada or in Great British Pound, they have an entity in which each one of those. So they have a use for that. But I have seen some other sellers that are really kind of holding off. So I really think it's specific.
You see the hold off. You see, for them, it's like, I can sit on this. I don't need the money yet. I don't want to lose about more than 10% on the value of my money compared to dollars. So you see that, right? It's not.
It's definitely shifting.
Unusual.
But again, they have VAT that they have to pay in that country. Sometimes they already have, partners in that country that they have to spend that currency. So it's not shifted to a point that you say, everybody's holding off. It's truly very specific to where exactly you're looking to spend the currency.
Yeah, and from my perspective, my previous hats were international payments. I think Yoni knows that why he asked me, but it is difficult, right? And nobody knows. We used to always use the analogy, if you had a crystal ball, which way the markets were moving, international markets, stock market, whatever it is, we wouldn't be sitting here on this panel like you'd be sitting on a beach, very rich
George
person.
Soros, yeah, we'll be sitting well,
right?
With money in our pockets.
So, the thought is like, you always think it's going to rebound. You always think it's going to get better, but there's no promises to that. I remember working around Brexit when pound was 150 to the US dollar and it dropped to like over 10 cents or 12 cents overnight, right? So, there's so much that affects the international markets and the exchange. We never would give advice, right? It's a decision for you to make for your business, whatever's strong for you. We used to generally say, like, if you need your money, like, take your money, right? That money is going to be better spent deploying it back into your business, ordering more inventory, spending on PPC, turning more sales, whatever it is, rather than sitting there and hoping that it goes up. And if it does, like, what's that actual differential depending on how much you're actually holding? And then, like, for example, I mean, from an Elevate perspective as well, we sell in all the international markets, Europe, pound, Canada, UAE, Japan, Australia. Like, the dollar is a lot stronger, but we're not going to just let that money sit there, right? So you have to factor that into your pricing, factor that into your business. And when if we tie it all the way back into selling your business, like, that's just a natural cost, right? That's a cost of doing business. There are ways to hedge against that, and some businesses of certain size moving certain amounts of money would consider that. But if you're only moving, $1 million a year, while that might seem like a lot internationally, that may not be the best option for you. But you'd also have to find the right solution for you. Kind of what Ali was talking about, supplier payments, I think that's a little bit different of a conversation, right? When dealing with China, we used to tell sellers to ask for pricing from your supplier in local currency, right? Because they typically added in a chunk to convert back to USD for when they had to. So that conversation still exists, right? Because if you're paying to China in USD, a lot of times if you're paying anywhere in the world in USD, you have to look at the exchange rate where it sits on the market today, but then also what that conversion might be added in. So it's a good point, and it's a sneaky way that people, or potentially sneaky way that people forget about, sort of little dollars and cents. But if it's 2 to 3% on $1 million order, that adds up, right?
Big time.
And the more transactions you have, you can always negotiate, better rates as well. So even if that fluctuation keeps happening, your volume really can dictate what that percentage is going to look like.
Can you hedge this? Can you lock in a rate with you guys, for example?
Absolutely.
Really?
And one of the most important things is really for us to see, what currencies you're operating and then what that transaction and volume is. And we can always lock in a rate and even look at it, a couple months down the line, if that's increasing, decreasing, and things like that, we can absolutely do that.
So just to help out the sellers here, it's almost like locking your mortgage rate. So, right. So, this is what's going to be. So I can, lock in the deal a month from now, 3 months, whatever. So just for the sellers here. So if you have foreign money, you want to make sure you're going to hit a certain rate, you can lock it in so it doesn't surprise you later on, for better or worse.
And to TJ's point, you can build it into the budget of what that's going to look like, so that if you already have that rate locked in, it makes it easier for you. And to that point as well, the best time to secure a facility is truly when you don't need it, because you have the leverage, right? You're having better performance, you're having steadily growth, or if you have just overall healthy business and sustainable growth, that's really when you have the best leverage for a better rate and higher amount. When you're not really performing well, it's really hard to hide that. One of the most important things is truly to have a plan of what you need the money for, so that you can have better ROI whenever you're going to invest it, whether it's advertising or inventory or anything of that nature. If you don't have that plan in place, you're not going to be able to get the best out of it, or maybe the best rate or best amount.
Is there some ratio of a credit facility you should prepare for yourself and put in your back pocket? For example, if your business generates, I don't know, 300,000 a year in EBITDA, right? Should you get a credit facility of 100 grand, 300 grand, 1 million? What's the rule of thumb here, if at all, if anything?
I think it really varies because if you're looking for inventory, it's really going to vary versus if you're using it for overhead or for expanding a product or just launching new products, right? So that's really going to be variable. We operate with multi-channels, so we don't do a lot of cookie cutter offers. We really like sit down and be able to review what the plan is, what you're looking to invest it in, and then we're going to be able to give you what we believe is the best amount to do so.
So you're saying when you really don't need the money, that's when you should sit with you guys and think about how to have more money that you don't need just in case, and that will probably position you in the best form possible into the future. That's the
Absolutely.
hardest thing to do, but the smartest thing to do. Yeah.
You don't have to take it right away, but you can at least show, the growth and the margins and be able to say, this is how much I believe I will need in the next 3 months, 6 months, and
Build the relationship. Yeah, create a relationship, build it with you guys, with the financial institution. Crucial.
and if you already have one, whether it's with us or with a financial institution, I do think it's also the right time to be able to ask for an increase. If you have an existing relationship, see if there's a better rate that you can negotiate because of that steady growth. So all those things is, I always tell people, if you don't need money right now is the time to sit down with a service provider in terms of financing.
Very good. Liz, go ahead. Did you want to drive it to another direction, or I think you're mute also.
Well, that's inconvenient. So we do have a question for Chris. Can Chris address the perception that sellers can get in trouble, even suspended, for using services that are offered by many, including Getita? The services are attractive, but forums are full of stories about accounts suspended for outsourcing those services. I think you want to do that too, but Chris, go first, then you.
Yeah, why don't I share this answer with Yoni, because I think what that refers to, is there a name of the person asking that I can reference? Or Dave. So I think what you're referring to, Dave, is there were some services or software tools or both that were automating reimbursement claim tickets. Again, defer to Yoni for that, but we did see that people were getting suspended, as they would for anything where there's a code of conduct abuse perceived by Amazon. We heard from a variety of people about that. Some of them were guilty of something and some of them weren't. But the caution I would advise or offer in terms of sort of the everyone's doing it, just make sure you vet the service provider, any service provider, whether it's somebody who does, reinstatement appeals or somebody that does reimbursement claims or otherwise, in terms of, are they TOS compliant? And don't have your answer to that question be, well, I went on their website and they said they're TOS compliant, or they said they're Amazon compliant. Dig into it, do some homework, and Yoni can give kind of the details
just
of it.
to hop in on the homework situation, it's pretty simple to do the homework. Amazon has invested about $14 billion into creating an ecosystem of solution providers in the form of an app store. So if you visit Amazon Seller Central, the app store, so they facilitate a lot of funds to create that environment. So it's very simple. Go start your search there. So any software of any kind in the marketplace that you want to kind of vet, go to the app store. If you see it there, it means it's authorized by Amazon. And what does that mean? It means that for example, Getita, where we're with the App Store, Teikametrics, they're at the App Store, which means we have a commitment to the sellers, but we also have a commitment to Amazon, to their terms of service, data security, private policy. So we got to perform on the highest standards. So in other words, we're exactly like Amazon sellers, right? And we're obliged to their performance, just on the solution providing side. So that's when you start there. So if anybody pitches you and they're not really in the App Store, you can think twice. So then you can really shop around with the ones in the App Store where Amazon has vetted them, check them out for you, and it's legit. That's kind of a shortcut to the promised land. Now, in regards to like automation, stuff like that, and then the reimbursement space, this was a few years ago. There was a few players that created basically robots. They just boom, 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 bomb claims, and that is not the way to go with Amazon, because on the other side, Amazon is providing humans who actually read the cases. They might have canned response and templates, but they're actually humans. So they don't want a situation where it's a machine versus human. They want human versus human. That's the way to go, and that's kind of their TOS, their terms of service. So any of your providers that you want to work with, just ask straight up: are you using robots or using humans? And also, just like I mentioned earlier, if they can tell you whatever, but if you really want to extra vet them, just go to the Amazon App Store. And if they're also on the App Store and authorized by Amazon, you probably have a better, a chance of being on the good side of things and not have an issue later on. Liz, back to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Yoni. I remember when that happened. and they're very, I used to go travel all around the country talking about Amazon rules, and Chris helped me with that because I was just in the product review rules space of things, but Chris is in the all of the rules space of things. And I would always talk about, you have to read what Amazon says. And unfortunately, sometimes not all of the rules are in one place. Like with product reviews, there are like 3 different locations that you need to look to make sure that you're doing your product review requests the right way and that you're dealing with product reviews the right way. And it's very easy to get in trouble if you don't know the rules, but it's not like you can say to Amazon, sorry, I didn't know the rules. And they'll be like, oh, that's okay. Just do better next time, because they don't do it that way, obviously. It's too big and the stakes are too high. So I have a question for Rich, but it's off topic of this topic. So I want to ask Chris, what are the top 3 reasons for Amazon suspension right now?
Well, and just to finish that point you were just making, a lot of Amazon employees have to relocate those pages for policy in multiple different places themselves. So you also might be dealing with somebody reviewing your account for a policy enforcement action who also doesn't understand the policy, or who also, you said 3 different pages, 3 different places.
That's a tough spot. That's a real tough spot, yeah. The other side doesn't even know what's going on, yeah.
Right. Not only, and I think Yoni said it well, in terms of you might have a generic template that you receive. It doesn't mean that a robot sent you that message. It means that there was a person acting like a robot who pulled that message out of a drop-down menu. That's true. But sometimes even the investigators either haven't got the training, they've got an SOP in front of them that hasn't been updated in years in some cases, or months in other cases. Or there's 3 different things in 3 different places, and they only know about 2 of them or 1 of them. And when they're referring to their wiki or their policy page or whatever, they're only reading 1 of those 3 things. And often, I mean, without getting into more details on that, often there's contradictory messaging or the SOPs are poorly worded. And that, some of that dates back to my time working on these teams at Amazon, but most of that happened after I left, where SOPs were just kind of left there to rot, and then they'd do like a patchwork. Or like, it's kind of like using Seller Central, right? They're not going to burn Seller Central down overnight and rebuild a whole new tool. They patch it, right? They use software
with
patches.
the API, just in the API world of Amazon, it's also pretty hard, very tough. It's a legacy system that they simply cannot replace, and it creates all these data noises, and you got to stabilize the data once you get it through the API. But that's like you can get out on the software side of things. But
yeah. And essentially, this is analogous to that. It's people looking at SOPs that have been patched, and there might be some copy and paste, copy and replace. And that's why you also, as a seller, see some outdated looking messages. Like they grabbed it, they're like, well, this is the message I need, but it's not quite what I need. So they're copying and pasting things together. And sometimes it's a mishmash of things that don't even, like, they don't have the time to read through the whole thing. And anyone reading it that receives it can see it doesn't make sense. And that's why a lot of people call into account health reps and say, you know what? I don't need you to help me appeal something because I've done it before. I just want you to tell me what this thing means. Can you like look at the
annotation? It's in English, but it's not in English. It needs translation. Yeah.
Right. And we've seen, without going into too much of that, we've seen grammatical things and things that just don't read correctly. But a lot of that is because templates have been modified in some haphazard way. But the top 3 suspension causes right now, one of them would definitely be any kind of listing compliance or detail page compliance. For some reason, we're still seeing odd language in titles, in bullet content. There's still some basic image violations that aren't flagged. I think a lot of sellers still assume that if Amazon lets you do it, that it's okay. Like if the tools don't just stop you from loading an image with a non-white background, for example, that just means it's okay as the primary image, that means it's okay. Health claims, lots of unsubstantiated health claims for like consumable products, but not just category specific, lots of listing compliance issues that I thought we would have by mid 2022 gotten a little bit more through in terms of progress. We haven't. We still see people doing ASIN variations wrong a lot, using wrong themes. you know, size for color, just strange things. And I guess we start the conversation with them, you know, did you do this yourself and you were learning this as you go and you were winging it, or did you bring in somebody to do it? Obviously, if you hire somebody to optimize your listing, you hope that they know how to, that's back to how you vet a seller, seller service properly. But a lot of people, I think, for some reason are still learning as they do or go. And that's not what Amazon is. Amazon expects you to front load all your knowledge and information, and there's no grace period. There's no, we're having teething problems. Have your game tight before you even start this stuff. That's why a lot of people get flagged. I mean, speak to any Amazon agency that you know in terms of like a brand that they're trying to onboard that had like verification problems because their documentation wasn't set. So maybe that's kind of the number two, is people missing supply chain documentation, people working with a manufacturer or a factory that doesn't have a website, can't function as a verifiable supplier, because now Amazon, their KYC process, there's zero tolerance for counterfeit, zero tolerance for quality complaints from buyers, involves verifying your supplier too.
You said KYC, what's KYC?
KYC is know your customer, and
Okay.
I mean that originates in the banking world, right? I believe, in terms of like trying to prevent money laundering, things like that. But I mean, Amazon's subject to that too, because they're not supposed to have sellers selling things that obviously they don't vet every listing, every product before it makes its way live on the site. So if you can't be verified with their automated tools, you might get flagged and suspended. But that's really just documentation. So everybody should have documentation.
Bureaucracy, right?
I mean, whether it's supply chain documentation, documentation on yourself as a business, you know, articles of confederation or incorporation, lots of information about where your business is established. Maybe a Google My Business. I mean, just to give people an idea of like verified, what can be verified, what
Jason
can't.
wants to add something here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, look, I have so much to say about Amazon, but I'm just going to wrap up by saying do better Amazon. But you know what I was just thinking, I was thinking back to your original question, Liz, about sort of the macro and the micro environment, and you know there's a lot of anxiety and concern about the economy that's coming. And I was remembering back at the 08 crisis as a big seller, and I think one way for sellers to either insulate themselves or to evolve into a better business, so many of great national brands were born in times of economic distress, because it's you know, necessity is the mother of all invention. A lot of product, and I'm a product developer at heart, a lot of great products evolved because they create this unique selling proposition because it's a difficult market, right? And so this USP is so critically important. And I remember in 08 with our game tables lines, which were cool and great designs and great reviews and everything, we actually saw a decrease in competition on Amazon because a lot of other folks in this highly discretionary category that was in a very bad recession died. And so I think that there's just a lot of opportunity. If you read the news, you're just super anxious and you're like, oh my gosh, maybe I should just fold up the tent. If you read the news, you want to find a tall building to jump off of. You know, I just want to encourage all the sellers who are listening to this webinar, you know, use your ingenuity, use your mind, come up with that unique selling proposition, because the competition is about to lessen. If we are in fact over the next 6 to 9 months going into a recession. So anyway, I just wanted to get that in before we close. I think there's a lot of positive things to think about as a seller. If you're just copying, you know, somebody else and trying to match price, and you're not creating a unique selling proposition to justify a higher retail price, then you're going to have a very rough 6 to 9 months. But if you do the thing that I just talked about, create that unique selling proposition, it's going to be smooth sailing. You're going to have a really good time over the next 6 to 9 months.
Nice touch.
That's a great point. And we actually have a little bit of flexibility at time. I booked this for until 2:30 in case we needed it. So I think we'll listen to the crowd in terms of the questions coming in and all that kind of stuff to see if we give people back some time. But we do have a couple questions, and one was, when you're dealing with a case with Amazon, how do you know if you're talking to a human or a bot? I want to get back to Jason's point in just a second, but I think the answer to that is you don't. Am I right about that, Chris?
No, the messaging is generic and canned, but that doesn't mean you were auto sent something like it was an out of office reply. that means it's a person selecting what to respond with. Amazon doesn't want employees, especially on the like policy enforcement, seller performance side of things, getting too creative with what they say. First of all, there aren't enough hours in the day for custom responses to everyone. Second of all, they're kind of narrowly allowing them to operate within narrow confines in terms of what the messaging. I think that's what this comes from, just the nature of the messaging being copy and paste. That's a manual response in a sense, because it's somebody choosing a pre-written blurb or message to send out. There's no, I sent in an appeal for account reinstatement and a computer rejected me. That only happens if you've maybe sent it from, not from the primary email associated with your account. So you sent it from some other Gmail you use and they didn't recognize it. I mean, yeah, that might be like something where it's just like, we don't recognize you.
I think
They're
there's
hard to tell because they're both equally bad writers, bots and people.
I think that's being unkind to the computers, Jason. So
I do think the general consensus is that that Amazon is full of robots and is mostly automated and is listening to everything you say and do, and knows when you've got a product insert that is non-compliant and is, you know, all seeing, all knowing. So,
right.
But they've got robots answering all your questions, but that's
Right.
not, I mean, there are
We're
huge
not,
teams of thousands of people at Amazon that are sending you automated canned messages.
we're not in the Skynet universe just yet.
Yeah.
This has become another hot topic because they've been blasting out all these messages. I guess this is the sort of number 3 that you wanted. People are getting all these messages about being related to a suspended account, and this has kind of reached epidemic proportions. Lots of messages are going out with brackets that haven't had the text replaced. So the investigator has a message, insert related account info here, and that is being seen by the seller that gets the message. So not only are they unnerved and afraid that they're dealing with an account suspension, which could ruin their whole business, but they're being told, oh, there's a key piece of information in this message you need to review to figure out how to appeal, but the message doesn't contain that key piece of information. It contains either empty brackets or brackets that say put key piece of information here. That just looks like it's a robot. And essentially, that's a human being with no oversight, no auditing, no quality assurance. They're just firing out messages, but it is a person. I'm not saying it's a person who should remain employed by Amazon, but it is a person who is sending a message with all of the copy. First of all of the rest of the text is copy and paste.
How many employees Amazon has right now worldwide?
Million plus.
And
their
worldwide,
AI
I don't
bots are
know.
like 6-year-olds, which are great, but I don't want my 6-year-old to be in charge of my business. It's a frustration.
That's why you
frustration.
get the robotic stuff, like the
I will
complaints.
say, Jason, you did say do better Amazon, and I do think Amazon's trying to do better. I think that
Chris,
they're
I think
not on the
think
messaging side.
Amazon's, they're executing, but I think they're planning to overhaul all of this, no?
Well,
What's
no,
that,
I
think they're planning to overhaul their support for sellers and self-performance. There is strategic plans of some kind, I think, at some point, no?
Yeah, there is an initiative in place to help improve improve the line of communication between sellers and Amazon, and to understand seller needs better. But like anything with Amazon, which is a great big company, that grew in weird fits and starts and weird, like big in some places and little in some places, and then beta testing this, and this is, it's been kind of all over the place. But I think that there is a real interest at Amazon in improving the relationship between sellers and the platform. I just don't know how long it's going to take.
To your point, Liz.
So one last thing, I think a few days ago, or a week or two ago, they said there's a new feature for account health, right, Chris, where you can actually see your score. There's actual numbers.
I mean, I don't see a perceptible difference. It seems like they're just swapping out green, yellow, red with,
got it.
And I wanted to ask Jason about this too, with healthy, unhealthy, or other. I mean, aside from just the terminology, what is the actual difference?
As far as you can see.
I mean, I read Amazon's blog post about that. According to, I think it was the second point out of the 3 bullets they provided, that was the most interesting piece. For anyone who hasn't seen it, maybe Liz I'll get you the link. I'm pretty sure it was the second bullet that said that there will be qualitative differences in terms of what's posing the greatest risk of a suspension, instead of just a blanket list in your account health of well, you've got 3 of these, 2 of these, 1 of these, 5 of these. They're going to highlight or somehow emphasize in this account health rating, they call it, which of those presents the
Which was
largest
critical,
threat,
yeah, or prioritize.
whether it's algorithmically or in terms of manual review purposes. I haven't really seen anyone, I wanted to ask everyone here about this because I haven't seen any chatter about it beyond just this blog post that Amazon put out. So.
Yeah, they do a good job of advertising these changes about how great they're going to be for sellers, but then they launch them and they're like, wow, okay, that's much ado about nothing. And Liz, to your point,
Right.
they are trying, right? I was recently on a call with an Amazon rep where they were asking, how they could do better on the brand registry department. I was like, good grief, where do I start? And we were able to identify some things that just generate an overwhelming number of tickets for their system, right? This is a $1 trillion valuation company that has had historic growth. They'll be talking about what they did during the COVID years for decades to come in MBA programs all over the world. They're very much an enviable position, but sometimes I just scratch my head and go, gosh, you guys are creating more work for yourself because of bad systems. And trying isn't good enough for Amazon and seller support and working with a lot of the things that frankly keep a lot of us on this call in business. When you're a seller and you can't make payroll that week because something happened, because an AI bot was dumb, or because someone at seller support didn't understand your problem and answered a question that you never asked that doesn't help you get your lights back on, right? And so I get a little bit fired up about this. Amazon isn't trying hard enough, in my opinion, Liz. I know that they're trying, but there just seems to be so much common sense steps that could not only improve the lives of sellers, but could also improve the lives of their seller support frontline people who are just getting buried by tickets day in and day out. So I'll get off my soapbox now.
I think they do a cost. I don't know if I'm disagreeing to an extent, but I think they do a cost benefit analysis and they see the dramatic amount of work and energy and hours and staff and pain it would take to put in a holistic fix. And I think they look at some of these tools or processes and they realize that they have to burn most of it to the ground and rebuild it from scratch. And
burn, baby, burn.
Well,
do it.
Right. But when they look at that, they say, you know what? It's going to be a lot less painful and a lot less risk if we just patch what we have in place and survive to fight another day, which has been in place. Amazon's done this all over different parts of the company.
I bet you if Amazon would try to make it negative, they would have to fix this kitchen, so they can keep cooking. But it seems like they're already a public company. They made it all the way, so they can do that.
This is a known concept inside Amazon to keep the lights on, not just inside Amazon. It's a known business concept, but we heard it a lot inside Amazon. How many meetings was I in where people said, that's a story for another time. Right now, we got to keep the lights on, focus on the immediate goal. So they were willing to embrace the idea short-term or even longish short-term that there were going to be inefficiencies that would make more work for themselves if it would stave off the pain and the angst and
kick the can down the road,
of the real fix. That's what scares me the most about Amazon. I like that they did the account health rating because it shows that they're at least paying attention to what the account health dashboard means and communicates to sellers. So that at least they're thinking about it. At least it's in front of them. But you don't want to, decrease morale by putting out a nothing burger either. So.
Liz, what else we got?
Keep going.
I don't know. Everyone uses this nothing burger phrase. It's about time I jumped on this nothing burger bandwagon. I've heard this so many times. That's like the 4th time I've heard it today, but the first time I've said it. So.
Well, that makes it that much more impactful if you've been holding it for this one time to use it.
Right. If I had a burger as a visual, I would hold it up, but there would just be two pieces of like buns with no actual burger between.
I've often thought that we should have props during these things.
Webinar
we don't
humor, folks.
Because I want everybody to see your faces. I don't think these
burger.
Alex liked the joke. I saw her smiling or laughing. Somebody likes it.
I liked it.
I liked it.
Once you enter hour 2 of the webinar, it's time to rotate in some of the offbeat humor, I think.
How's everybody feeling?
Props can work well. I mean, especially like if you want to pass the microphone to someone. Pass the microphone
Nobody
to Liz.
here, just me.
But I think we appear in the order that we appeared to each other, so we don't necessarily appear in the order that we look like we are, if that
Right.
makes any sense at all.
It
But
does. Can I throw out one more, can I end on an upbeat note, which is for purpose, getting back to exit strategy, I am very impressed and happy with the number of brands that have approached us saying we want to exit this year. We want to clean up our account health. We noticed this, this, and this. They're paying way more attention to it. I think we have, some of the aggregators who are promoting this concept of, buying somebody else's business to thank for that. We have Amazon to thank for it. We have a lot of different parties in the Amazon community and ecosystem to thank for the idea of focus on account health and get ready before you sell. Don't just say, well, we're going to just have somebody assess our business and take it from there. Do like a pre-assessment yourself of your account health. I can't tell you how many people worked with us to get rid of some of these performance notifications that they had let fester or did not acknowledge or didn't read in some occasions. And by the time they were approached by an aggregator or discussed sale of their business with another party, they were in way better shape and they probably had a way better, valuation at that point of the business.
So I second the motion, Chris. We get a lot of clients in. They're like, look, we want to exit in a year. Help us clean up. And I think there's a much more awareness. I know Liz is behind this in all of her communications, and everyone on this call is. It's a really important step, and I am also encouraged in seeing more of that as well. And I want to give Amazon some props, which I don't often do. The most recent article about them going after those 10,000 Facebook groups on the fake review thing is very encouraging. I hope they don't take their foot off the gas, but I hope they put the pedal to the metal to continue to go after and shut down that practice, which is so nefarious and bad for honest, well-meaning sellers doing the right thing according to TOS. So kudos to Amazon for that.
Doing a webinar about that next month with Colleen from Ecom Engine, because that was
awesome.
I was so excited. I was just so excited. Jason, we had a question from a guy named Jason who asked, hey, Jason, what key recommendations are you making to your clients looking to exit as it relates to growing their brand? So if someone comes to you and says, hey, I want to exit within the year, what does my brand need? What kind of makeover does my brand need? What are the key recommendations you're giving?
Well, good question. We talked about one of them, that unique selling proposition. When someone searches for your products on that first page of search results, does your product stand out amongst the crowd, right? Do you offer a value proposition that can justify a higher retail price in the marketplace? We talked about that. A couple of other things that I think are important. Multiples, folks look at the growth, the revenue number, the growth rate is really important, as well as the EBITDA. And there's always a dance and a balance between those two metrics to make sure that you position yourself best for an aggregator like TJ's. And so, we're moving into a recession if we're not already.
Oh, there you go. You're back.
Sorry,
I do have to kind of bounce off. I hope that's okay, everybody. So thanks
Yanni,
for having me. This is fascinating. I can go days and days with this. This is like music to my ears in a good way. It's a nice concert, so I appreciate it. But if you're making an exit, hopefully this was, or think about it. Hopefully you got some insights and it was helpful. Nice to see everybody. Nice to see Jason, TJ, Michelle, Chris, Rich, Alexandra, and Liz. I'll see you guys later. Bye bye.
Yanni.
Apologies, Liz. I'm not sure what happened to my computer there. But the other thing that I would say, and this is for any business, whether you're preparing for an exit or just gonna get through this recession, look at your P&L, look at all of your expenses, do a reevaluation. If you can save $10 a month right now, do it. It'll put you in the mindset to really evaluate, am I getting value for my business, what I'm paying for? If you're not getting value with what you're paying for, really put that under the microscope and cut it. Is it driving your revenue? Is it driving customer loyalty? And is it driving EBITDA? Because the bigger that growth percentage number is, the best vertical trajectory or 45-degree angle your sales growth story is. And if you've got a healthy EBITDA and a nice balance sheet, TJ mentioned that valuations are 2 to 3 times EBITDA. TJ, if you saw a company that had all those metrics all in line, we've got a strong double-digit growth. We've got a really good growth story over the last 24 months and a strong EBITDA and a strong balance sheet. Would you guys consider a multiple of 4, 5, 6 times perhaps?
100%, and that's the real story is, if your business is not in perfect position today, everything we've spoken about, and while it may be a lot, you might have some time to fix things, to right the ship, so that in 12 months or 10 months, whatever it is, you can be in that perfect position. But if you've done everything right and your business is still, chugging along and going up and to the right, cool. Like let's have that conversation. If you have that strong brand, the one of the things that I did want to talk about, and I know Liz, we got a question that came in, was about multiples. And it's easy for me to sit here and talk about Elevate, but the Fortia Group out of Ireland, who's like a broker, they did a survey of the 35 aggregators, and over 82% of them are seeing multiples between 2 and 4 times, right? And 75% of them have seen valuations decline greater than 30%, and don't anticipate it to rebound in Q3, Q4. So I think like the reason why we wanted to have this webinar was to look at that and say, less deals are being done. The ones that are being done are typically businesses that were either done already early in the year or may not be in the best position, or if they are, they're far and few in between, right? And they are the sort of the shining star. And if you're not yet at that shining star, take this time, figure out your business, right the ship. It's almost like a pause button. And like Jason mentioned, your competitors may fall down, so that in 6 months and 12 months, you might be up there, right? And you might be positioning yourself way better than you are today. If you don't have to, don't force it. And we're kind of being really honest about that. And for somebody that's looking to buy businesses, focus
You're not
on,
doing a good sales pitch here, TJ.
focus on your business, right? If you look at the capital markets and where we sit and what we have to do, like in reality, we're a lot more focused on operating our own businesses and growing our own businesses, and taking them all on D2C and into physical brick and mortar retail. Like, yes, but if there is that one bright star, like I said, cool. But I think from a seller perspective, you just have to pay attention to inflation rates and interest rates. And from our perspective, we need to kind of see more stability in that before we can get more comfortable, before our investors can get more comfortable, before sort of the market settles down and maybe plateaus a bit.
Good.
Liz?
I sent you a couple of questions
Back
that
to you,
are
Liz.
in your, but back to what you said about how your brands, Elevate's brands, are selling on international marketplaces. They're selling on other marketplaces. I wanted to ask Rich, I've been talking to a couple brands that have been selling on Amazon. They've been fiercely protecting their brands on Amazon, using Amazon transparency, that kind of stuff. Are you seeing brands launch on other platforms and face brand new IP violation situations, or do you feel like other platforms are learning from Amazon in terms of protecting a brand?
Yeah, I mean, it's entirely possible to have new IP issues when you go to a different platform. One thing that's interesting though too, in terms of just overall looking for what other channels you can sell through, is that IP tends to be the ticket to other platforms. I mean, you build up a certain amount of momentum on Amazon in various ways, and that's great. But the thing that actually allows you to enter another platform and be competitive is your IP. It's the brand name recognition. It's like you enter a whole different platform with your product that's trademarked, that has a brand name, and you're the one who's able to do that. Your competitors aren't able to enter with that same brand name or with a differentiated product that you have patent protection for. It's having the patent is the thing that allows you to now take advantage of a different platform selling your product and not have other people that are maybe more established on that platform be more competitive and to beat you out there. So, not exactly your question, but IP tends to be the thing that makes you more competitive, and it also very often is the thing that helps deal with some of those false claims. So, you have the trademark, you have the patent. It helps to undermine other people's IP claims against you. Most of these platforms these days, especially Amazon, tends to defer toward the IP owners. So it pays to be the person holding the IP. I mean, a lot of times they'll shut people down even unfairly because someone says that you're violating my design patent. so it pays to be the one holding the design patent. So in general, IP tends to be the ticket to not only keep yourself competitive as you enter other channels, but it helps to deal with a lot of those IP issues that can come up. There's a lot of false IP issues being created. There's a tremendous amount of sellers are dealing with IP unwarranted IP issues in all kinds of new ways. It's surprising to me after 28 years of being a patent attorney to see something new. But in the Amazon world, I see something new all the time in terms of like a new approach towards being anti-competitive and getting someone knocked out from using, let's say, a patent that they shouldn't be able to assert. It's happening all the time now, and in lots of new creative ways.
I don't know whether to laugh or cry about that.
Liz, if I could just add to what Rich is saying, I'm still amazed at how many brands we talk to here at our agency that don't have a trademark, a registered trademark. We're about to, I keep, not to beat a dead horse, we're running into a recession. If you get brand registry and you get all of that great brand registry data that Amazon is now giving you on your customers, and you have A+, and you have a brand store, and you're working on your followers, I mean, conservatively, you could see a 20% lift in your revenue. If you can see a 20% growth rate through a recession, go talk to TJ, right? Just getting your IP with a guy like Rich, building up your brand, getting that brand registry, and doing all of those things are going to grow your business. I'm still amazed at how many that I see that just don't have it.
I'm amazed as well, and also the ones that will cut corners and take shortcuts and try to save a few $100s on the process. And it's like those ownership issues we were talking about before. Most of them could have been avoided by just doing it correctly from the beginning. It's like, I mean, there are some issues that come up, and like maybe there was a partner involved and whatever, and it's not about doing it wrong. It's just the way things evolved. But there are a lot of the issues that we see in due diligence on these purchase deals where it simply could have been done correctly from the beginning, and that would have eliminated the issue.
Well, so if people have a bunch of things to sort out, and it's going to be costly, like Michelle was saying, relabeling products, repackaging products. Allie, I think that there are some questions in terms of if someone needs to borrow money to fix problems like this, to fix their brand, is that something that Sellers Funding can help with?
So if you're 100% out of stock, that is something that will hinder us from moving forward. However, what we're going to look at is not the past few weeks, the last month. We're looking at 12 months of historical data. So you may be borrowing less than when you're, in sustainable growth time period. So it's not going to be impossible, but it's going to be a little bit more difficult. So that's something that you can absolutely, go ahead and apply. If over the last 12 months, overall, it's good and you do still have listings, we should be able to work with you, but it's just going to be at a lower amount.
Right on.
Another thing that's really, important to know, you can always do one of our cash management solutions. So if you don't need to borrow money as well, you just want to increase your cash flow, you could always do our daily advance. So that's perfect for that type of time period as well, that, you do need a little extra cash, but you need to make sure that, just cash flow is continuously flowing. So instead of waiting for Amazon to pay you every 14 days, we can just pay you every single day. That's another way that we could help somebody that maybe is not in the specific time period to get the amount that they're looking for.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So I've had some very
I had a question for Jason.
Okay.
I mean, just do you work with brands that don't have a trademark registered, or would you just assume they'll be hijacked left, right, and center? And
yeah, but my
my
stipulation is that they got to talk to Rich first. And sometimes they will have a brand name that's known in the marketplace that they cannot get registered for whatever reason, and I'll say, guess what? It's time to change your name so that you can get a registered trademark. And so I think those are some discussions that I have monthly, Chris.
Yeah, by the way, often there are things that you can do. Like if you've got a name that's just so generic that you can't get it protected, then you could add on to it sometimes. Like you've got something like you are selling it, you're selling natural spring water, and you've been doing very well doing that. Maybe now you keep saying natural spring water, but you say Poland Spring, like you add on to it. Like a lot of times if you've got something that there are a lot of different people using that certain name, and so really no one can own it, you add a term onto it. You add a distinctive term onto it, and then you can differentiate. Then you start, selling it under that full name, and then that full name is protectable. And then that's kind of a way to hack a situation where you can't protect the name that you've been using for some time, is you add something onto it.
There's one other, that's so good, Rich. That's gold right there. Michelle, I had one other hack also. Sometimes we will change a UPC code, and instead of changing the packaging, instead of repackaging, we'll just slap on an Amazon barcode label. Typically, if your UPC code is on the barcode label, they're scanning it, they're not looking at it. You don't necessarily have to update your packaging. Now, I know that's probably a gray area, maybe worse, but it will help sellers save money if they can burn through their existing packaging, and then on reorder, they can create their new packaging, and that will get their costs down.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you think about it, really the barcode's meant for point of sale at most retail stores, and
Yep.
in marketplace, you don't need that beep. So you're absolutely right. It's really if you do sell into multiple channels.
TJ, what are the incentives to sell to an aggregator versus a PE firm if multiples now appear to be equal?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the operations of the business going forward, right? Typically, in our experience, a PE firm is going to look for a business that's significantly larger, and then look to operate that a little bit differently than just an Amazon business. I think if multiples are the same, I'm not sure that the views of your business are going to be the same from a PE perspective. If you may think that they might want you, but they might want you even less than we want you, given the current market. I think from an aggregator perspective, at least from an Elevate perspective, we were operators first, and operators at the core. And I think that's one of the core reasons why we're still here and why we're still sitting here talking and doing public addresses and buying businesses, right? So, I think, some of these other companies, and Liz, you had a question that came in and said, there's been quite a few layoffs at aggregators, and, what's the cause of this and how should a seller view this? I think every instance is different, but, the main one is they were focused on hyper growth, but they weren't focused on the operations. I think every seller knows that you can't just operate an Amazon business by automating it with a robot, and even if you have that technology, it's not always going to be right. You can use all the softwares in the world, but there's still an aspect of human that needs to be in there. From our perspective, we bought 26 businesses in 2021, which is one every 2 weeks, which by normal acquisition standards is pretty crazy, right? Trying to integrate that all as well. There's some aggregators out there that bought 100 plus in that same period, right? And I see the hurdles that our team goes through to continuously integrate them and launch new products and manage them from both a creative and a social and a listing and a supply chain and a compliance and a legal. Like, you think you have one business and one problem, or two businesses and two problems. It doesn't work like that. Those problems compound across. You take in all the supplier and shipping costs shipping over the last 12 months, like, issues just compound and costs build very quickly. And when it circles back to the whole debt covenants and having to sort of pay back your debt as an aggregator, you need to do that, and you sort of need to have cash to do that, and you have to have cash to operate. And headcount is typically one of the first things, and usually the largest expense to cut. So that's probably where a lot of layoffs went. Jason?
TJ, I'd love to add to that, because I've been on the receiving end, not of an aggregator business, but of private equity groups. And there's just a different strategy involved from each of them. If you are a really good Amazon seller and you're Amazon only, talk to an aggregator. Just trust me on this. We need an hour-long episode to talk about what it's like to work with a private equity group. And I'll sum it up this way. If a private equity group can save the seller $1 or themselves a penny, they will save themselves a penny 10 times out of 10. They will build out a LOI process and an ownership and employment agreement that protects their pennies, not you nor your brand. They have a very short horizon. They want to flip this thing in 2 to 3 years, and they have to hit those metrics. And they have a million protections that you will not understand as you read those documents until it's too late. So, look, I think if you're an Amazon seller, working with a great aggregator like Ryan and TJ at Elevate, like Unibrands, like Heyday, and some of these other guys out there that are doing things the right way, who have a long-term horizon and that can help you see the vision for your business. Maybe you've reached a ceiling you can't take to the next level, and you want to see that brand survive long-term. Go talk to an aggregator. Just trust me.
That's how I feel as well.
Well, we've had a couple questions that we couldn't get to, but I'm going to send those to the presenters individually. I appreciate every single one of you for coming on today, every single one of you that's hung out with us during this time. Everybody who registered for this webinar will get the replay and a list of resources from all of our presenters today, but we're going to give you 5 minutes back. Thank you, all of you, very, very much. I think we had a great conversation today. If you've got follow-up questions, I'm going to give contact information for everybody who spoke today.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.